Good evening, Pueblo-Toastmasters. We're going to learn a bit about pathways. My presentation includes a slideshow that I will be glad to share the PDF by email afterwards. So if you think you're going to miss something or something's a little small on the screen, don't worry, you'll be able to go back and look through it. The process of this is I did a bunch of screen captures. However, if there are questions, I'll be glad to try and bring it up live in case live doesn't work. That's why I've got the screen captures, because whenever you do a live screen, that's when the system loves to slow down to the point that makes it really hard to share. The idea of Pathways presentation is to give you some key ideas, but not go into all the different depths because there's so much that I could share that we could easily spend hours and hours going over the different parts of Pathways and the different parts of the agenda system. But we want to make sure you have the key points of this. So we're going to talk about Toastmasters.org. Make sure you know what you're doing to get logged on, to select a path, navigating within pathways, selecting a project, and connecting with the club meetings. And with the club meeting website, how to log on to that, looking at the projects, getting your speech information in there, and what to do when you're the Toastmaster, just real quickly on that. So real quick, you should know that Toastmasters.org is our headquarters website, and that's where our education website lives, Toastmasters.org. And when you get there, you're going to want to log in. That's right up there at the top. It's going to bring you to the login, and you're going to use your email address that you put in when you signed up with your email form. The first time you log in, you're going to want to use your forgot password option and have it give you a password. Or if you ever forget your password, it works great. Once you're in, it has tendency to move you around different places, but I almost always wind up going back to the My Home. You have to click on your names, you get that little drop down, and then click on the My Home. It's got a nice bunch of tiles that'll help you out. If it's not offering to give you your path, to help you find your path the first time, which pathway you want to do, you can always go to the education programs, or if you're ready to select a second path, because sometimes we get to the point where we're up to level 4 or 5, and we decide we want to start doing some easier projects again while we think about what we're doing with some of our harder projects. So you can always go to the education programs tab, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and do a choose a path option. And then it'll ask you, do you want to view all the options or take the assessment? The assessment's a good way to see what it recommends, but at the end of the assessment, you can still choose any of the paths you want. And as you can see, it may recommend presentation mastery in a lot of cases because that's the public speaking main path. But there are lots of other options. They all start out the same level 1 and then branch off with some subtle differences as you go through, with the projects getting more and more some differences as you get further on through the levels, like level 3, 4, and 5 will have a different project for each and every path, but a lot of the same electives. And once you go back to your home and you do your name, your My Home, go to Basecamp is how you get to Pathways. So Pathways, just think about Basecamp gets you to your pathways. Once you're in there, you're going to want to pick the path you've chosen. My case, my dashboard's a little busy. Yours is probably not going to be that busy, so you're probably going to just have the one that you're going to pick. When you first go in there, you're going to start right at level 1, probably going to take you right at the top, but it's pretty smart at trying to remember where you were last, which usually is pretty convenient, but occasionally is a little confusing. So if you're ever unsure, either go to the top there, you can go to your visionary communications or whatever your path is. If you're in presentation mastery, just click at the top or click at the overview on the left, and that'll help bring you back to where you were at the top, and then you can zoom down to where you want to go. So when you're first getting started, they've added in a bunch of additional information right at the beginning, mastering your fundamentals. You're going to get additional information talking about your meeting roles, your timer script and log, tutorial about how to evaluate, your R counter script and log, and then it'll get into information about your icebreaker, writing a speech with purpose, as well as the vocal variety body language, and that evaluation and feedback project, which is the one that gives you some extra stuff to do. The evaluation and feedback project is the interesting one in that it's the first one where it suddenly has more than one thing that you have to do in a single meeting, where you have to do a speech and then come back to another speech, but it's usually repeating the same speech again. And then you have to evaluate somebody else at another meeting. So that one has 3 different meeting roles, and it's supposed to be doing 2 speeches, which aren't necessarily any speeches you've ever given before, although it can be. And then it talks about these different required roles. So you're supposed to come up and do a table topic answer before you even do your icebreaker speech now. It's in there, but we have to get people used to thinking that way now. And then it talks about all these different roles and how they work together. And oh, look, they give you little check boxes now that you can fill out within the path. So gives you a place to keep track of it. This is for you to keep track of it. It turns out your club officers, your vice president of education, don't really see this, but they can always go back to the agenda and see most of the things you've done. So it's a good idea to keep track of this so that you know what you've done before you request a level completion. But all of these items are in through here, and you can work through this so that you can see where you're going this, as well as it gives you some questions to think about, like, what did you learn during this different projects within level 1? What have you done? What has the experience given you in your level 1? And then once you're done with all the items in level 1, you get to complete your requirements. Now, for those of you that have already completed, say, a level 1, you don't have to worry about going back and adding in working those extra things that they're talking about, like doing timer or awe counter. Don't worry about going back and adding those if you've already submitted and gotten approval on your level 1. We don't have to go back and add those for existing paths that we've done. But if you've in the middle of the level and they've added those extra things in, we now have some extra work to do. And for any future paths we open, we'll have some extra work to do. More learning and more experience for us to share with our other Toastmasters in our clubs. All right, so when you actually want to get into the projects that are related to our speeches, you can go into the icebreaker. Now, I'm pretty sure most of our club members have already done the icebreaker. This should be where you've gone into it. If you've done your icebreaker speech and haven't gone in through this project, it's a good idea to go into it just to see if it matches what you've learned and figure out, hey, did I miss any key concepts while I was doing it, so that I can continue to apply those to future speeches. Now, it's key for all those different projects that we're matching them up on the agendas, but I want to add one more thing in before we do that. We have our Toastmasters Club website, which is Pueblo-Toastmasters.toastmastersclubs.org. But I've added a new link on there that's called Pathways Project Checklist, which takes you to my check sheet that gives you a quick summary of all the existing projects that we have, as well as the new ones that I've added. So in bold, you can see table topic speaker is now in bold at the top, and timer or awe counter is in bold. Those are the 2 new things they've added to level 1. So you can use this to help keep track as a summary of what are the items that we need to be doing as we're progressing through the levels. This will also take you back to the website that you can get extra copies of this if you need, or to get other people. Okay, when you go to our club website, you see member login. When you're going to member login, you start typing in your name. At some point, it'll drop down with your name in gray. Click on your name. And if you don't have a password yet, or you've forgotten it, or it doesn't remember right, blank out that password and click Authenticate Login. It will email you a new link to reset your password. Once you're logged in, you can go to the agendas. And when you're in the agendas, we've got our Zoom link right there at the top so you can register. Currently, we're using the same registration for recurring meetings, so you can just register once to be able to go in over and over with the same link, so you can save that. When you've got a speech to give, you want to fill in your speech details, the project, the title, and the introduction. For the project, the first thing you want to do is decide which path it's in. If it's in presentation mastery, you're already set. If it's not presentation mastery, the first thing you want to do is use the collapse all function so that you can scroll down to your correct path. In my case, scroll down to visionary communication and plus to open the projects within visionary communication. Scroll down and say, I'm doing evaluation and feedback number 2. And then, now that's filled in up there. Now I can fill in my title. What's the title? And then a speech introduction. Oh, what's my speech introduction? Speech introduction should be something that the Toastmaster can read that they're saying about me. So I don't want to say, oh, well, this is my third speech. It's not the Toastmaster's third speech, it's Keith's third speech. So make sure you're doing the third person point of view and just give it some information that gives some context of your speech or some context of you as a speaker or even some context of the audience. Perhaps you're doing a specialty speech that says, oh, well, I'm giving a keynote speech that I'm practicing for a bunch of accountants. So everybody on the audience, pretend you're a bunch of accountants and I'm giving a speech to you. How would you react if you're a bunch of accountants to this kind of a speech? Think about that. The most important thing here is do that save project details. You can click that over and over again just to make sure you don't miss something up, because I can't tell you how many times I've had people say, oh, I had the perfect introduction and a really great title. I put it in there. I don't know what happened to it. Guess what? They must have forgotten to hit that save project details. Or they might have hit save project details at the same time the Toastmaster was saving the rest of the agenda and they just didn't enqueue properly because maybe the programming wasn't written quite as smart as it should be. So just make sure you hit that save project details a couple of times just to be sure. Now, if you're the Toastmaster and you come in and see, oh, how come there's no title for this person's speech? Well, let me email them. You can email them directly by clicking on the little envelope in front of their name where they're signed up to give a speech. And that will then ask you, hey, do you want to email them through the website or do you want to email them through your web email or your email program? Maybe you've got one of the different email programs like Outlook or something that'll come up. So you have that choice there, and email and say, hey, I'm looking for your speech information. And if you have any trouble, email it back to me and I'll put it in as your Toastmaster. You've probably seen me send you those emails on occasion. And when you're the Toastmaster, you have 2 ways of printing the speech introduction. You can use a little printer icon within that speech details, or what I usually like to do is I go to the top of the agenda, there's a printer icon, and when you print on that, there's a print all speaker introductions button that you click, and that'll come up with a multi-page printout ready to print all the introductions. When you're the Toastmaster, you also have this pencil icon. I've also recently set that so the grammarian has that as well, so they can add the word of the day to the agenda, because when you have that pencil icon, you can move people around on the agenda, change who has different roles. But there's another place you can go to when you're editing this agenda. That's the meeting description field. That's that header at the top of our agenda. That's where we can put the word of the day. And in all candor, there's a couple other tabs, but we don't need to do that. The other thing you can do here is also the theme for the meeting. So keep that in mind. When you're done making any edits to the agenda, make sure you click Save, not Save as New Agenda. If you click Save as New Agenda, all of a sudden we'll wonder, why is there suddenly a blank agenda for today and a second agenda for today? Because that's what Save as New Agenda does. It happens on occasion anyhow, but just be careful that you're not doing save as new agenda unless you know what you're doing with that function. And I've thrown another option on there, the schedule grid. That's on members only section. That'll take you to our grid. And you can always click it to open in a new tab, and you'll get the grid that you're used to. And that is my information to you on pathways. And I've blocked off my stop sharing option. There we go. For any questions, I believe I've used up my time for today, so I'll be glad to answer any questions. If you have any questions, please let me know by email, or we can do an additional question and answer session at another meeting. I now return control to our Toastmaster.